Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome.
People can use their microphone when they speak.
Good afternoon, everybody. If you could please use your microphone when you speak. And as I guess it's this little speaker thing supposed to be at the bottom, which I was reminded of the other day. Anyway, this is our May Sonoma County Library Finance Committee meeting. And we have a full agenda today. So let me find mine. Seems to have disappeared. Apologies. Sorry for the delay. I'm going to call us to order and call the roll. Commissioner Doyle, Commissioner Elkind,
Here.
Commissioner Bowles,
Here.
Commissioner Cahill is unable to join us today. And that's all of us. And I'm here. Commissioner McKenzie is here. Announcements. I just had a couple of things. I guess this is as good a place to put it in there as possible. In the past, we've talked about how fully funded some of the other people's pension plans are. And I think Andy's brought this up a couple times. And there was an editorial last week in the Press Democrat, which mentions the Sonoma County Employee Pension Plan, which is a separate independent pension plan, is they're funded at 93% now. But the reason is that they have not had a cost of living adjustment for about 20 years. Haven't been giving cost of living adjustments. So I thought that was an interesting fact to know. And it says by comparison, the California Public Employees Retirement System, or PERS, and the California State Teacher Retirement are only about 75% funded. And I believe that's going to be reflected in the conversation we have today with our PERS folks. And the other thing I read in the paper was that health insurance premiums are rising faster than inflation. So they've gone up for PERS, risen about 31% since 2022. So these are some really significant increases that we are also obviously seeing in our budgeting. So just comment about some of the stuff in the news. Public appearances. Do we have anyone online, Lisa?
There are no members of the public attending via Zoom, and no comments were submitted.
All righty, thank you very much for that. We're going to move into our discussion. I'm assuming our PERS reps are on the line with us. So we're going to talk about unassigned fund balance planning when it comes to our PERS program for retirement for our staff. And welcome. I'm not sure who I'm welcoming, but which Meredith, did you want to do introductions? Would you like to just jump in?
Well, thank you. This is the ongoing. Good afternoon. The Finance Committee continues to review options on addressing the unfunded accrued liability under our pension, and our pension is held at CalPERS. And this committee had one presentation from a third party private vendor that provides solutions for planning for unfunded accrued liability and pension costs. And this month we were scheduled to invite representatives from CalPERS. We have Danny Kaufman as well as Daryl Lathrop to present today on the options under CalPERS for pre-funding pension costs. They have a presentation that we included in your packet that they'll be showing today. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us here today. Again, my name's Danny Kaufman. I'm with CalPERS. I'm a customer outreach and support analyst here with our Section 115 trust programs. So I work with both the CERPT and the CEPT And I'm joined here today by Darren Lathrop, who's the Customer Outreach and Support Manager. And he'll be helping me with any questions that you guys may have as we go through this today. I'm going to share my screen, which give me just a moment for that and make sure you can all see it. And this goes in tune with the packet that's attached to your agenda today. Everyone see the screen okay on your end?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And as you guys may know, the library does participate in our OPEB pre-funding trust. That's the California Employers Retiree Benefit Trust. But today we're going to talk specifically about our California Employers Pension Pre-Funding Trust, or we call the SEPT. We'll touch on the reasons and benefits of using the SEPT, and we'll review the management administration that's all provided by CalPERS here. I'd kind of ask if we just hold questions maybe to the end so we can get through all the slides, and I'll be happy to jump back through if there's a slide that you would like me to go back to, and we can go back over to make just kind of things flow a little easier so we can keep on task and on time for you all, because I know that's important. And just kind of as we get started, I just want to do a quick refresh of what the library's current pension summary is, and some of the costs associated with that. So if we look at the library's pension as it stands as the last valuation from 2023, you're looking at a funded status of 77.5%. I know you had just mentioned that the average is 75 in there. So you guys are right in tune with things that are going on. If we look at the overall unfunded liability that's out there, it's a little over 20 million. And with the upcoming July payments, and overall 25-26 projections, your UL payments about 1.7 million, with the projected normal cost of 1.9. That's that percentage of payroll that's coming out. And where does this kind of fit? How does this look if you're looking compared to other JPAs and libraries? I wanted just to provide a visual, and this is coming from the summary evaluation matrix. And this is pulled, CalPERS has this tool on our CalPERS webpage under the Actuarial Resources tool. And it's an interactive tool that allows you to compare things like the funded ratios and contribution rates. What we can see is that, the average funding ratio across the selection, and I focus just on JPAs because that's where your library falls under. And those are the blue dots, and the orange dots highlighted there are other library agencies within that same category of JPAs. So it kind of gives you a visual representation of where you guys are at compared to other like entities. So so it just kind of give you a frame of reference on that stuff and everything that you may have with those. So CalPERS offers some additional tools to support as well to help manage your liability and your pension. So just a quick review of some of those additional tools as we go through this. You have things like your July UAL annual prepayment. You also have a program such as the Fresh Start program. You can make additional discretionary payments. And there's programs like the SEPT here, the Section 115 pre-funding trust. Now, when we talk about that July payment, what this allows you to do is make that one-time prepayment in July, and that saves you 3.4%. So that UAL payment for the year, you make that payment in July, you get an overall savings about $55,000 by utilizing that. Items such as the Fresh Start program, it's where you work with your pension actuary and actually re-amortize the debt over a shorter time period. This does commit you to larger payments, but the benefit is you're paying that debt down faster while saving on the interest. It's a good option, but you do commit to that larger payment, which can be difficult sometimes. Kind of thinking like going from a 30-year loan on your house to to a 20-year. You're going to be paying more, but it's going to save you more in the long run. Other tools, like I just kind of mentioned a bit ago, additional discretionary payments for ADPs. That's when you make additional payments to pay that UAL directly, and that helps kind of lower it down. But there are some risk involved with that because the amount and timing kind of need to be considered. There's no liquidity to it, so you only want to make sure you send in what you will not need, and market performance can have an impact in the effectiveness. So timing is important with those too. That's kind of where we end up then looking at Section 115 trust. It's one of the very few, if not the only, investment tools available for some public agencies. Not only that, but it's the only tool that really addresses both normal cost as well as the UAL, and it's the only tool that really allows agencies to keep up with these costs. And when we're looking at things like the investment tools there for it, this table gives a good comparison of what's out there. So if you look at on the right, we see kind of local agency investment fund or LAIF. It could be county treasurer, money market, wherever your general fund is. On the left, we have the pension system. And the pension really does have the highest expected return overall. It also has the highest risk involved in it too. Longest time horizon, there's really no liquidity to it. If we look at the LAIF or county treasurer, on the other hand, they're completely liquid. They have the shortest time horizon, the least amount of expected yield. Current returns are pretty good right now, but historically, these perform closer to about 1% annually.
Mm.
Now, Section 115 trusts like CalPERS Pension Pre-Funding Trust are geared to provide strategies specifically targeted to outperform LAIF over a longer time horizon. And these trust strategies will provide a broader range of expected yield and volatility when compared to LAIF and a pension fund. And they also provide local control to you, allowing your agency to determine, their own unique time horizon for investments and contributions. And employers can request disbursements also from the Section 115 trust for any pension-related expenses incurred within a fiscal year. So kind of these additional options are provided by these Section 115 trust programs really give agencies the ability to reduce the risk associated with ADPs and allow for increased investment income over time and additional stability by providing an additional source of income. Why do we want to kind of do these things? Well, it allows us to, grow assets for future pension contributions. Again, we earn that higher rate of return than we typically would in the general fund. And it kind of can provide us a way to help stabilize future budgets by having this additional income to pull from. Sometimes it's also used as a rainy day fund to help and preserve liquidity. And really, these really help you give local control over the time period. And when I kind of talk about a rainy day fund, in this example, we've taken just 3 months of your overall pension cost. In the event that market volatility results in an increase to your UAL contribution, this 25% reserve could be enough money to really allow the agency to stabilize the budget, kind of avoid that pinch you have at times. And these UL spikes don't hit the agency right away, and the volatility kind of occurs, which when it does afford you a bit more time to kind of catch up with it. And having this rainy day fund is there to help allow you, so you don't have to really go into your budget. You have this built-in kind of investment vehicle to help. And sometimes when we're talking about, investment vehicles, we have some hypotheticals we kind of put together, and these are kind of more just to kind of remind us of the power of compounding interest that we have out there and how these can be used. In this example, I just kind of used our strategy 1, which is a 5.4 estimated yield. In a perfect scenario, let's say we took that 3.4% savings we get in our July, for making that July UL payment. How would that look? So this bottom row here on this graph, in a perfect market, if we got that 5.4% yield over a 10-year period, you could see that 55,000 growing to, almost about 93,000. So a bit over $40,000 in, potential estimated earnings in there by utilizing trusts like this. And so now we're going to kind of go into the investment management, the portfolio and the support services offered here by CalPERS. And, CalPERS has been administrating the Section 115 trust programs for going on 18 years now, when the California Employers Retiree Benefit Trust, or the CERP, was established. Combined, our trusts have over 23 billion in assets under management, and over 600 contributing agencies, and some of which are now participating in both pension and OPEB pre-funding. And this makes CalPERS one of the largest Section 115 trust providers in California in terms of both assets under management and number of participating agencies. And we talk about those agencies, we have a wide variety that contribute into these trusts. Over 150 plus cities and towns. We have 14 library districts within the programs, and 7 of which participate in our SEPT, and 5 of them are actually dual participants in both trusts. When we look at the portfolios, the SEPT investment portfolio has strategies that are geared to a 10-year investment time horizon. And participants have the option of choosing one of the two available strategies, or they also have the additional option they can contribute to both strategies concurrently. And this is great if your agency is looking to preserve assets in strategy 2 while allowing for growth in strategy 1. And the SEPT takes advantage of 4 public market asset classes. It's the allocation within each asset class that dictates the expected performance from each strategy. And the target range for each allocation is relatively tight as well, at ±5 and ±3%, respectively. The investment performance is updated monthly, and it's made available on our CalPERS website. And what this table illustrates is the time-weighted investment returns from the SEPT gross of fees. In this example, the returns are reported through March 31st, 2025. Now, the slide does include both our SERPT and SEPT. The SEPT is located on the bottom portion of it. And you'll also find the investment performance benchmark directly underneath the investment return for each time period. As you can see in the data points, the funds in the SEPT are performing well relative to the benchmarks within each time frame. Now, the SEPT is an irrevocably dedicated trust that gives you local control. You get to choose the strategy or strategies you'd like to participate in. Contributions are voluntary and can be made on your schedule and timeline as well. And liquidity can include all pension-related costs. So that's your normal cost, your UAL, or any additional discretionary payments made within that fiscal year. When it comes to trust participation, the cost is an all-inclusive fee rate that combines administrative management, custodial services, and investment management fees. These fees are charged daily and are equal to the current annual rate of 25 basis points. So as an example, if the trust were to manage an account with a daily balance of $1 million for 365 consecutive days, no additional contributions, no disbursements, and assuming the assets didn't gain or lose over the course of the year, that would have charged the employer a grand total of just $2,500. This is the same fee rate for all trust participating agencies. Fees are only charged to assets contributed within the trust. This means that you could join this year and contribute at a later time or a later budget cycle in another fiscal year. And again, no fees are charged until the assets are contributed into the trust. There's no tiering based on asset balances. There's no fees for changing strategies, no liquidation or transfer fees. There are no hidden fees with us. And it's always been this way. CalPERS is the only not-for-profit Section 115 trust administrator available to California public employers. And we're hopeful to see a reduction in fees as we believe the participation fee rate could be reduced as more agencies join and assets under management steadily continue to rise. In fact, in our SERPT program, we implemented a 1.5 point fee reduction to the OPEB trust, which brought it down from 10 basis points to 8.5. And this is unique to CalPERS, is the fees are structured to only allow for the continued administration and support of the program. So we're not in it to make money on that, it's just to cover the cost for the programs. And CalPERS has been managing the pension system for more than 9 decades, and it's the largest retirement fund in North America. And we really lean on that experience, the expertise, the vendor relationships, and unmatched economies of scale to manage both of our Section 115 trust programs. The investment policy and the management services are provided by CalPERS. CalPERS board will accept the investment fiduciary responsibility, and there are government codes in place that allow you to delegate the investment fiduciary responsibility to CalPERS. Now, how is this a benefit to you and the library? Well, it means that you're not required to establish an investment committee or create an investment policy. The SEPT is managed by CalPERS Investment Office, specifically our affiliate investment program, and our external manager, State Street Global Advisors. The investment policies are reviewed often and go through an exhaustive 1-year-long asset liability management process, or ALM. And this process includes a review of the investment policy every 4 years with a 2-year scheduled check-in. And the investment policies for the SEPT are published and made available on CalPERS website too. Now, as a state agency, our teams do not receive a commission. Darren and I are both salaried employees. You can look us up on the web, and we're really focused on just the administration and education support to these trusts. In fact, there are 14 team members dedicated directly to these programs and these programs alone here. We're not intermingled, so it allows us to fully support your agency. And lastly, CalPERS is also dedicated to providing transparency and administers the steps to 100% GASB compliance. Additionally, we offer a range of other support services to help you as well. This includes our online record keeping portal. So this allows you easy access to both trusts just at one location and one link. We also deliver account updates and conduct plan reviews for participating agencies. And we can provide these on your preferred frequency and schedule. In fact, I think I met with Myrna just last July, and we went over the CERT trust with each other. We can regularly conduct webinars to further educate prospective and existing agencies, and are available to offer support with disbursements, contributions, and even assist with the onboarding of new agency employees as needed. The contracting process is streamlined. Darren and I are available to help walk you through each step. The process typically starts with an agency staff making a recommendation to the governing body. Then the board or council will then vote to approve setup of the trust account. With all the required documents on file, the account can be established usually within 3 to 10 business days. We'll send your agency a copy of the contract agreement, your new account number, and schedule time to walk you through the process of making contributions. Once the account number is established, you're immediately eligible to send contributions when you're ready. And they can be made easily through the MyCalPERS website as well. Now, I know I shared a lot of data fairly quickly with you all, so I'd like to open it up to any questions. I'd be happy to go back to any slides if you have anything for me. So we'll open the floor.
Thank you very much. I have a question on slide number 9. I'm just going to let the commissioners have a moment to get there. So I just want to talk about the differences between strategy 1 and strategy 2, looking at expected returns versus risk management. And it's interesting to me that the expected returns from 5.4, 4.9, comparing the two strategies, but the risk is much, it isn't the same kind of percentage. And I just wondered if you would talk about why the risk is relatively higher in strategy 1 to strategy 2 and the relationship to expected returns. Thank you.
Between the two, I think, Darren, I'll go back to the allocation within the strategies. If you want to help join in with that, is the risk allocation is really going to be tied to the asset classifications that the strategies are split into.
Yeah, I would like to first kind of to respond in saying that, you know, Daniel, myself, you know, we're not licensed investment advisors, and our investment team would be the best and most appropriate to answer that question more specifically. What we do know is that, you know, based on you know, as it with most of these investments, as we continue to climb the ladder and expected yield over time, then inherently the risk profile is going to go along with it. Because of the simplicity of these and how these portfolios have been put together, they're really mostly about balance. And so while those projections don't seem to be in line with the 1% gain, you know, I would say that that is probably still appropriate when compared to other vehicles of a similar yield over a 10-year time frame.
Could I ask a follow-up question then? Just to
Absolutely.
stay here. So then I understand that. Then to me, with a naive looking at this and not knowing how it's invested, why would you invest in strategy 1 versus strategy 2? I mean, just looking at this chart, that doesn't make much sense to me.
Again, you kind of got to look at it holistically, not just what's on this page. You know, the reality is that, you know, the risk profile, that standard deviation is really just indicating a level of ups and downs that you could perceive in the market in any given fiscal year, right? So in a good year, you could potentially see a return, you know, upwards of, what is that, 13.8%? And on the downside, you know, negative 3%, right? And for that tolerance, depending on how you're going to utilize this trust, it may be of concern, especially if you're looking at like a 5-year time horizon. For those that have a much longer time horizon, 10 years, maybe there is less downside to looking at those ups and downs on a yearly basis, and they're really focused on the longer term 10+ year performance. They're going to be going to strategy one because of the expected return that they're going to have over the 10 years. So, I mean, it's kind of a tough question to answer because, again, those are all kind of personal decisions that you guys would make internally. But if you are looking for the most amount of growth, obviously you're going to end up taking on more risk to do that. I hope that was clear. Kind of a tough question, to be honest.
Guys, thanks for the presentation. I've got a number of questions that all relate to slide 5 in terms of the available tools. And so I'm going to just go through them one at a time to be sure that I'm clear on the options and what the benefits and drawbacks are of each of these. First, it sounds like in any given year, we have to make 2 payments at the moment. We have to make a payment toward our unfunded accrued liability, and we have to make a payment toward what you referred to as our normal cost, which is a percentage of the salaries that we're paying. Am I right with that understanding?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. So in terms of the first option, the July UAL annual prepayment, Myrna, you've been doing this for the last couple of years, haven't you? You've come to the commission each year. We've agreed to approve this, and we've saved $50,000, $60,000 a year. That seems like a straightforward strategy. I'm going to do these a little bit out of order, but I'm going to jump down to number 3, the additional discretionary payment. This is essentially in any given year, we can make a contribution greater than the required UAL payment. It goes into the pension fund. It doesn't commit us to making an additional payment in a subsequent year. Am I understanding that correctly?
You're on the
Correct.
ball, correct,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Now with the air quote fresh start reamortization schedule, this means that we commit to paying down the unfunded accrued liability at a faster rate than we're being required to, right? That I think now we're on a 20-year amortization schedule, and we could commit to pay it down in 15 years or in 10 years. The limitation or the drawback is that we're now locked into making higher UAL payments every year over that 10 or 15-year period. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And with the pre-funding trust, it sounds like what you're recommending to us is that this gives us some flexibility in that the amount that we contribute and the timing of the contribution is entirely at our discretion. And it also sounded like, and I know you kind of touched on this, and I'm going to ask you to do it in a little more detail. It sounded as if we needed access to those funds, we had some limited access to them. Is that right?
Correct, yes. So
please elaborate.
I'm going to elaborate, and maybe this would have been a better point for the question that was asked prior. One of the things that some agencies like about this trust is that if you were looking for the most bang for your buck long term, you would make an ADP to the pension system. Now that money is a one-way street, so there's no access to those funds, but it is expected at 6.8 over a 30-year time horizon. If the concern is not having access to those funds, Of course, a trust that's putting up 5.4%, while not as good as 6.8, is available to you, and those funds can be accessed to reimburse the library for any pension-related expenses that it might experience within the fiscal year. So essentially, as is with, other programs, and not to confuse it, but, I think of like a 529 program for like a child's college fund. Yeah, funds can be accessed to pay for those college funds only after you've spent the money, right? Kind of a similar thing here. So we see some agencies that are a little more on the conservative end, like having that access to those funds, and would rather get a 5.4% yield over time than getting 6.8 and not having access to those funds.
Okay, so I think that's very clear. Thank you. So, I mean, we're obviously going to have some discussion internally about what we feel comfortable committing to, how much flexibility we need. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Thank you both. I had a similar questions of what Andy was asking about, so I won't belabor those. Just to be abundantly clear. Just to be abundantly clear, if we do a pre-funding trust, the money that we have in there now stays where it is. And this is an additional chunk that we start on the side, right? There's no switching of current CalPERS monies.
No, these programs are standalone. So
Yeah.
they would be in addition to what you're currently funding for retirement.
Right.
Where this program stands out, and kind of what was Daniel was explaining, because obviously he was trying to be as helpful as possible by providing all the tools that we have here. And he was mentioning that of the rainy day fund, and one of the purposes that we find most agencies really particularly take away from this program is that I think we're all aware, I don't want to assume. So if you want more explanation, I'm happy to do so. But it's the unfunded accrued liability that poses the biggest issue for most agencies because of the volatility that is present. When the performance of the retirement fund does well, of course, the expected UAL payment can come down, which is great. When performance does not hit the 6.8%, it can create an inflation of that UAL payment for agencies. And so Danny provided a number of, I want to say roughly $900,000 as a kind of a starting point, or maybe a minimum amount that might be helpful to subsidize the budget when those, UAL increases do occur. And so, thinking about like you obviously ultimately have say on how you use this. I mean, we've seen agencies that were looking to do ADPs and use this trust as kind of a holding for that money, and while they dollar cost average over a 10-year period. That's another option you have available to you. So there's many different ideas of what agencies have done we can provide to you, but this one seems to make the most sense because it's also the financially, a much smaller amount, let's say, right? If you had $900,000 that you could invest and let it ride for 5 years time, expectation is that you'll have more than $1 million after those 5 years, and then of course use it to help subsidize and pay pension. And that's really kind of the objective.
That's an interesting addition. Now, Andy.
I do have another question, guys, please. And this is on slide 7, what you call the Fresh Start program, which I think of just as a accelerated amortization. I see a current amortization schedule, then a column for 15-year amortization and a column for 10-year amortization. For the 10-year and 15-year amortization, the payments are the same every year, whereas the current amortization schedule shows payments that vary from 1.699 million up to 2.23 and down to 913,000. What is that based on?
So there's a couple things that to know, and like I mentioned before, the retirement fund's performance will change the schedule on an annual basis. If you were to look at evaluation, this is June 30, 2023 that we're looking at here. Had you gone to a prior 22 or 20, sorry, is this 22?
This is
Daniel?
2020, this is 2023.
23. If you gone to prior schedules, you'll notice that in those projected out years that those numbers will change, because when, like I said, that performance of the perf gets passed on to an employer when they haven't actually hit their projected 6.8, they smooth it out over 5 years. And so essentially what you're seeing is that market performance keep getting spread out over your amortization schedule. So that's why you're seeing those changes in the current schedule. The alternative schedules allow you to essentially kind of rebalance, so it levels out your payments. These aren't guaranteed payments when you do a hard fresh start like this, but it does allow them to level out and take out some of that volatility. So then, of course, depending on future performance, will dictate whether those numbers go up or down. But again, you've removed a lot of that volatility that you're currently seeing on your current schedule.
So the reality is, not to belabor this, but if we were, for example, to say, well, let's shift to a 15-year amortization, the payment in year one might be $2,183,000, but
Mhm.
year two, it could be different, and every subsequent year, it could be different.
Yes, and again, it's like, I mean, this year, I think it's too early to talk about where we're going to end up with the retirement fund in terms of what it's earned this last year. But whatever those results are will dictate how much the payments will be going from 2027 and beyond. So you're going to see this schedule. You're going to get your new valuation sometime in August, and you'll notice that the schedule has changed because of that performance. So
Okay.
What
And
we
you
s-
had, I'm sorry.
I was just going to add, so a lot of agencies, what we see is they go to something more of like what we call a soft fresh start. They don't necessarily re-amortize it, which is again a hard fresh start would be like, signing the paperwork and filing that new refinance mortgage. They just mirror. They use this as a guide, and so when they have the money and they can mirror that of the 15 or the 10-year schedule, they'll do that by making their required traditional payments as well and an additional ADP to that amount. They're still paying it off faster. That money at ADP still going to that principal balance, and it's allowing them to still pay it down sooner. So, there's other options. It's really kind of a combination. We present these because it's, not one tool in itself is really the I would say better than the other. It's really kind of a combination of the tools that are really going to be mostly beneficial for agencies.
Yeah, so we could in theory say, you know what, we're gonna mirror this, but we're not gonna make it official per se. We're just gonna make additional discretionary payments that are larger than what's currently
Mhm.
required. Final question I had, and I should remember this, but I don't. I know that over the last few years, as we've looked at CalPERS, that you have been in the process of lowering the discount rate to bring it more in line with reality and less in line with wishful thinking.
Mhm.
Is 6.8% really the projected return for the CalPERS portfolio? That seems high to me.
That is the expectations currently, yes. Um, yeah, I can't get
I'm
too
okay.
far into the weeds on it, but yeah, 6.8 is expected return annually for the retirement fund currently. That's the
Okay.
expectation.
All right, thanks.
Mhm.
I have a question on slide 15. Funding program employers. I just want to make sure I understand this slide before I ask my question. So what I'm looking at is you're looking.
Could you turn your microphone on, please? You're a little difficult. You're a little soft to hear.
I turned it on and off, whatever. Okay, so I'm looking on slide 15 on the pre-funding program employees. And I just want to,
Mhm.
first off, make sure I understand this slide correctly. You're saying I'm trying to add up, this should add up to 628, right? Pardon?
some agencies.
Oh, they're duplicates. Okay, that
Yeah,
answers my
we have,
question.
o-
Sorry,
out
I
of,
was
out of
like,
the, yeah, out of our participants, of the 101 in the SEPT program, 74 of those are actually dual participants. So we have a total of 628 contracted agencies across both trusts.
Yeah,
Okay.
it really should read maybe 628 unique contracting employers, right?
that's why I was confused. I was like, that doesn't add up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to say something, Marilyn?
I have a question after you're all done.
Well, I don't know, sure if I actually have a question. We're seeing, some pretty good returns on our interest right now, how we are holding it. And I guess that we have to talk to your investment people to find out where, if it was in a pre-funded trust, where it's invested, or there's different strategies, but we don't have any of that information, right? In terms of
As-
the expectation of 5.4.
I'm not too clear. I mean, those are the most recent projections over a 10-year time horizon based on the holdings.
Well, I asked that question very poorly, and I'm going to jump to the CFO first. Go ahead, Meredith.
So out of, on back to slide 15, of these steps, contracting employers, what percentage of them actually do use the SEPT in a way to invest their, their funds and then pull funding out to make an ADP, et cetera?
So there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of unique ways that agencies have used this. I would start by prefacing the fact that most agencies, much like the library find itself in, were very heavy in funding OPEB first. It's also been around the longest. And so there's been obviously a concern to get funded status up for OPEB just because of the financial reporting benefits that come with it. When it comes to SEPT, again, it's been around for, we're just approaching 5 years, with how long it's been established for. We're seeing agencies really start to transition over to this trust and looking at it in a much different, using it in a much different way. More often than not, the rainy day fund is going to be your most common. They're looking at smaller dollar amounts. Over time, they're utilizing ADPs. The thought is that this is a tool that will provide flexibility, and it's flexibility that they want in addition to getting as much money or their UA paid down as fast as possible. I would say that on the second most common is probably, again, I think they're just building assets. So maybe they didn't have much of a plan. They saw the value in putting money into this long term. And so they have made contributions with kind of an undetermined use for those funds at a later date. By far the two most common, the dollar cost averaging out of it is very infrequent, although there's a couple that have done that. But again, it's really how they can use it.
I also have a question about the fees. If there is if we invest our funds, we have a SEPT and it's been going on for a couple of years and we'd like to draw down on it, either for a rainy day or for an ADP. Are there additional fees for that?
No.
Yeah, no, we actually just had an agency recently. They had some change in their council. And so the new council came in, they had money in this trust established already, and they elected to utilize essentially every cent that was in there to an ADP against the perf. They weren't obligated to close the SEPT account, so they elected to leave it open. And we were able to transfer funds directly from the SEPT to the perf for them. Again, there's no cost to do that, and there was no cost to continue to leave it open. So they can still have access to it and make contributions later date if they decide they want to continue to use it.
Any other questions from anyone one. I want to thank you both. You don't have any preliminary information on how the plan's doing this year that you'd like to share with us, do you?
Insider information. I sadly I don't.
Okay.
You know, we do work under the CalPERS umbrella, but our program's pretty unique because we are kind of insulated from that stuff. So
Mm,
unfortunately, yeah, I don't have any secrets to tell today.
Okay. Well, what I learned was about more of the flexibility that's involved here and the ability to, kind of use the trust almost as a savings account and then do the discretionary payments out of that. It's really nice to hear some of these other options, and they seem very pro-employer. I mean, they're really trying to help employers adjust to their circumstances. So this was very helpful to me personally. So. go-
If I could make one more additional comment, you know, we always try to get you know, agencies to kind of think about it in the manner that even while, especially because we're out, you know, doing our outreach and education on this trust, you can imagine it's a pretty tough battle when LAIF is you know, currently returning a 4.5 and is completely
Yeah.
liquid. And the reality is that this is a longer term game, you know, and so, you know,
Yeah.
if you really think about it in that sense, you know, I usually apply my own personal, you know, life to it. Like, you know, of course I have high interest payments on my mortgage or whatever, my car, but I also need to fund my retirement. So, you know, it's in my best interest to do both on some level. And that's kind of, I think, the same kind of guiding principle with this trust. I mean, where you're going to see a benefit from it. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, if nothing else from us or you, Danny and Darren, thank you so much for being with us. And our CFO will undoubtedly be back in touch with you.
All right.
Thank
Again,
you.
thank you very much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it. If you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to either of us. I did include on that last slide, you've got our direct line for our team here. You also have Darren and I's direct contact information, Myrna. So if you do have any other questions, we're here to help you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
afternoon.
Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You too. That was interesting.
Can we have some additional discussion about
We
this?
can. Would you like to make some comments, Sammy?
Yeah, first of all, Myrna, thanks for setting this up and, you know, giving us another option. You know, we've heard a lot about the 115 trust now from two different firms. And my personal feeling is that, as I look at the different options, the one that feels most attractive to me is, I'll call it the informal fresh start or informal, more rapid amortization, which is we don't have to do any additional contracting. It's like what you did with the OPEB, with the exception of not setting up the trust, right? We just agree, okay, we know we have to make this up. I mean, I'm looking at this amortization schedule on page 7, and I realize everything can change based on investment returns and et cetera. But if, for example, we were to go to a 10-year amortization as opposed to the current, we would be looking at saving, you know, over $6 million in interest payments, and that's significant. And we would be more rapidly assuring our employees that when they retire, there's going to be a pension
It's in there.
that's in there for them. So I think the most important thing is that we do something. This feels like the easiest, most direct way to do it. Whether we picked, you know, 10 years or 12 years or whatever, that we just say, you know, let's commit to making an additional discretionary payment above what's required of X million over the next fill in the blank number of years and commit the library to that course.
Have a policy. Have a written policy like, to that extent.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's how the OPEB was. We will try every year to do such and such. And, you know, but I guess my question is kind of more basic or something, but if we're operating on a balanced budget, we're spending what comes in and we're looking at probably decreasing sales tax, and maybe we're looking at increasing property tax when people get reassessed. I don't know. But if we're on that kind of balance, we're really talking about the funds that we have now. I mean, if we were following that plan and expecting to have that kind of money every year, where would it be coming from if we're not, we're basically balanced budget spending what's coming in. Because that's why we're trying to do this planning for the money that we do have. But I don't know, I just feel a little insecure about expecting it to.
Can I just make one comment and then I'll defer to Myrna? Our balanced budget really has to include both of the payments that we're required to make, right? The UAL payment that we're required to make and the so-called normal cost. So what we would be talking about is only the difference between the UAL payment that we're already committed to make and what the additional UAL payment would be. So if, just for example, and boy, this is hard to read,
I
but
know,
it
it's so
looks like
tiny.
our current amortization schedule, this is slide 7. In 2025, we would be required to pay, it's just a hair under 1.7 million. If we went to the 10-year amortization, we'd be making a payment of 2.8, but that's only 1.1 more than we would have to pay anyway under the balanced budget.
Right.
So we would be using things from our fund balance, but I don't want us to be looking at the larger number and thinking that's what would be coming out of the fund balance. It's only the difference.
Yeah, but it's still 1.1.
Yeah, right,
We're
right.
looking like going a little backwards this year, it looks like.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I can't read any of these numbers myself. Oh, good, you're blowing them up.
Yeah.
Boy, I feel like we're at the
I
eye doctor
I
looking at the
know,
eye.
not good,
I'm
not good.
failing. I can read that top line, UAL.
Yeah, okay, that's better. That's
That's
better.
about it.
Yeah, but I guess, and it feels to me like we've got to balance a number of different concerns, right? Just to speak frankly, one concern I have is that when we have a large unassigned fund balance, that feels like a target
I know what you're saying.
for municipalities to say the library has all this money. Whereas if we were to say, if we were to set up a fund
Mhm.
where we're making a commitment to meet a liability that we already have. I mean, it's not, it's not like we're taking on an additional expense. We're just acknowledging that we owe money and need to fill that gap. It changes, I think it will change the discussion in a more productive direction. That's my view.
Right.
I'm gonna stop talking.
No, I agree with what you're saying. And I'm going to bring this topic up about some of the other things in terms of our reports. It really isn't all unassigned. We do have commitments that don't necessarily show on the reports. And you're right, if we had a policy about this, it does commit us to something and it does reduce what's truly unassigned, because the numbers right now aren't really completely reflective of our plans. So anyway, that was very great. Myrna, did you have any comments you'd like to make at this point?
Yes, I do. I'm encouraged by the conversation, the discussion that this committee is having, and that CalPERS presented a number of ways of either utilizing this a 115 trust or not. We don't have to commit to a trust and paying extra fees when we have some tools. And that's part of the, educating and informing ourselves as to what the tools are available. So I did like Commissioner Elkins' example. So for example, the current payment is almost $7 million, right? That is in our amortization. This is what I use to budget for next year. That's if we do pay monthly, but if we pay lump sum, it's 1.644. So we save $50,000. So the difference between that, let's just for the sake of discussion, we're paying on a monthly basis, we would end up paying $1.7 million under the current schedule. If we say, okay, we'd like to use the 15-year amortization and the payment would be $2.1 million, that's approximately, I think, and maybe I'm just repeating myself of what you said, another $480,000 more. Which could be a combination of operations revenue and maybe could be a little bit from, the fund balance. So it's really, I think that if we could, there is potential for that here. For at least, just looking at it, I mean, the payments are not going down unless we're down at 2040. The annual payment would be 1.4 million because we're paying down our principal, right? But other than that, it's going to continue to go up until 2034, over $2 million. And yet, if we, this is a point in time if nothing changes, and we do know that there's variables that do change, but we will be doing a beneficial service on paying down this liability, if there is that additional payment.
Well, I want to comment about the other group that you had in to, the private or whoever, the Keenan or whatever their name was. The thing about them is that kind of freaked me out was the fact of having our own investment committee and taking on that responsibility. And it just seemed like beyond anything we would want to do. But my question about this is, sometimes like we pre-fund, I think we saw this with OPEB, but if the whole kit and caboodle, goes down, I mean, we put a bunch of money in, but we lose money, we go backwards because, the investment scheme it isn't working. I mean, you were talking about the discount rate. I mean, if it's not 6.8 in returns this year, it's hard to imagine that it will. And then we go backwards on what we owe. And so if we set up a trust, is that as protected as having the money that you're getting interest for us through the, the county or whoever's investing our money now? I mean, our interest seems good because it's in these conservative investments or something, and we're relying on that now to help, balance our budget, the interest we're getting. If we put it in, if we do create a trust just to kind of use it as a savings account, those aren't necessarily going to be the same returns, or are they? That's what I was trying to get at, and I didn't ask it very well.
Seemed like they had two different portfolios and you could do one or the other or a combination of both, but that was it. There were limited investment options. I guess my reaction to what you're saying is, the market giveth and the market taketh away. We can't, in my view, just like an individual investor can't really time the market, the best thing that we can do is consistently make payments over a period of time, expecting that over the long term, we'll earn a reasonable rate of return. So what we could do, for example, is we know that the required UAL payment is actually going to vary every year, even though they showed it as being constant here. It's not. But to Myrna's point, let's just compare the current payment to the 15-year amortization for the heck of it. And it's like, okay, with the current schedule, it's just under 1.7. The 15-year, it's a little bit under 2.2. Let's call that $500,000. And as a policy, we could say, we understand that our UAL amortized payment is going to vary every year. We commit to paying $500,000 more than that over the next 10 years. Or until we reach a point where the pension plan is 100% funded, for 2 years in a row or something like that. That to me, it's a simple strategy. Myrna, to your credit, we're already saving $50,000-$60,000 every year. I mean, until you brought that forward, I don't think we ever did that with any of your predecessors. So, kudos to you. And I think the same would be true on a little bit larger scale if we were making a larger payment. So that's all money that we would have to be paying in interest. We're saving it. We've got a consistent plan to close the gap, and it's simple. So that's.
You're not setting up, you're not talking about setting up any separate thing. You're just talking about the additional deposits based on a schedule like this.
Yeah, well, in terms of setting up a separate thing, I mean, you just, just as you've created, on our fund balance, we have a fund designated for IT capital resources. That money is still parked in the same place until it's allocated.
Right.
But on paper, it shows that we have assigned funds for that purpose. It would be the same thing here, right? If we said, over the next 10 years, we're going to make a total of $5 million in additional payments, we wouldn't actually be moving money out of where it is. We would just be assigning it.
Yeah, your
It-
cash is not moving.
Yes.
You're just saying that we're reserving or setting
Right.
aside.
You're
X
setting up
number
a
of
reserve
dollars.
account. Yeah. Yeah. That feels simple and straightforward to me.
I really like this, Sandy. The only two questions I have is was there any appeal about the rainy day fund? And the reason I had a little bit of about borrowing money and then not having to take things out of the wallet, it always worries me when you're in a volatile market, it's all the time. If you need to make, I mean, do I misunderstand what the rainy day fund is, where if you have payments out and they're not a good time to take those payments, it gives you some buffer? Do we feel, okay, go ahead. give me-
What I thought I heard him say, and Barbara, I'm just going to say, to your credit, you have, over the years that I've known you, have really been an advocate for us to put aside additional money
Mhm.
in our own, rainy, I know we don't call it that. What do we call it?
Stabilization.
Stabilization fund. What I thought I heard them say twice is that you could draw on it for any pension-related expenses. So what that meant was, let's suppose there was a terrible year in the market, and all of a sudden our unfunded accrued liability payment went from 1.6 million to 3 million, and we were struggling to make it. We could reach into this fund to cover what we owe, but it's not a general rainy day fund. Was that your understanding too? It was
Yeah.
only for
Right.
pension related expenses. And we have, I think, a viable stabilization fund now, which is equal to 20% of our
Right.
expenses, right?
So why, the idea, the reason I'm asking that is so that it makes really no sense for us to go look for their rainy day fund, which limits how we can use that money, where right now we could use it for the same way, but we have the flexibility. So I just wanted to get clear that no one
That's
here.
my view, Gina, but I'm not
No,
saying.
no, I'm just saying, I think for me, what's helpful is when we think about these I think about these various potential way we can invest is saying, we don't want this, we don't want that. And then it allows you to be like, that's not an option. I mean, or that really, or it's not going to solve any problem, or it's not going to make what we've already got better. So for me, that's helpful to sort of look at, don't like this part, or we do want this part, and then what's the cost of that? For me, that's how I think, but.
Well, there's kind of three things now that we're kind of talking about which is you can set up a trust and put the money in there,
Right.
and then you can use it. You have the flexibility of using it if you need to take it out and pay your pension, but only pension costs. Or you can do, kind of what Andy's suggestion is, that we, virtually do that by keeping the money and putting it in a pot of money on our reports. which is, you know, which is simple, but if you're actually going to make a discretionary payment, then you don't have any control over it. You're just in there and, you know, there's no flexibility, there's nothing else involved. So it's
But what
really
we
three
would be
things.
giving up potentially is the investment arm of being in CalPERS. I mean, what you would, if you put the money in their scene, and I'm not suggesting we do, I'm just really looking at this. There is an advantage of an investment level that we don't, that if we keep it, it
Well,
might not be, I'm,
Well,
you know,
we wouldn't be keeping any more than we would if we set up the trust. If we set up the trust, we wouldn't put $5 million into it day one. We would fund it,
Mhm.
you know, a certain amount every year. And all we're doing under what I'm suggesting is it's going directly into our pension fund, which in theory is gonna earn 6.8%.
Okay.
As opposed to one of the other
Right, okay.
investment options, which is a little bit more conservative.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. Okay, so that, yeah, right, okay.
And our cash stays where it is now, which they refer to as LAIF. I've never heard that before.
I haven't either. What did that mean? I didn't even hear them.
Local agency investment fund.
Oh, so
is,
that's like the county, what the county's
Yeah.
doing with our money. Okay.
you know, which, and those funds, you know, we've seen that our interest earnings have actually been pretty good and have helped to make up some of the shortfall
All right.
in our sales tax
We're
revenue.
depending
So,
on it, right? And I don't know, it seems as though, you know, CalPERS still has this rather wild expectations and they're too high and all that other stuff. The county seems more conservative, more up my alley for a public agency, but anyway, we should probably move on. It's 4:05 and last, yeah, go ahead,
so
Andy.
I mean,
What's next?
can we bring a recommendation to the commission to basically say, we've been looking at this and talking about it, and we want to address the unfunded accrued liability, in a way that assures the stability of the pension fund for our employees. And to do that, we recommend that we make additional payments of, you know, $500,000 a year for 10 years or until the fund reaches 100%, and just have some discussion and maybe reach a vote so that Myrna can take some action on it.
Well, I was going to throw it back to Merida and say, would you come back, would just be all right to come back to our next finance committee meeting with a recommendation that we make to the, based on what we've talking about. I think it's pretty clear what we want to do, but would you want to write it up for us?
Is doing it for the June 5th meeting too soon?
Are you saying for the next finance?
Finance, come back to
Okay,
us,
okay.
come back to us and make sure.
I guess the only question I have, and I'll give you a chance to think about it. If we did that, would that require then a budget adjustment on a budget that we have just approved? Or if it's coming out of,
Mhm, yeah.
So a couple things in terms of just time allocation.
Mm.
Half of the finance committee is gonna be, or the finance team is gonna be on vacation in June due to kids' schedules. So if in order to have a good, well thought through proposal, I would say June is too soon. And the next meeting is in August. So either way, there would be a budget adjustment, you know, either now for June or later. And given that if you're looking at one-time payment in 1 year, then it really doesn't matter if you want to take a look at this policy in August and then take it to the commission in September. I think that's still very timely.
Okay.
Fine. And then I
Yeah.
can make a recommendation as to, you know, what's doable.
And is Erica seen the information as well?
He's been out of the office returns.
I know, I just.
Later.
Sorry, I didn't.
No, I think August seems like a reasonable thing, and we'll go through the budget.
Okay.
Option for 1 thought.
Yes, I think that, it's reasonable and doable. Reasonable and doable, yeah.
I would just add if, because, if you need something more in order to do that, please reach out informally to Barbara and, so that you have what you need in order to come back to us in August, okay? Thank
So
you.
we're proposing that whatever the budget sits on June, this is not part of it, and
Right.
this will not be in it in any thoughtful, this additional, whatever we agree to. And then we have it in August for finance, and then hopefully it'll go up in September to the commission. Is that the?
Right,
we're
and
hoping
then
for?
we'll do a budget
Okay.
adjustment
Yep,
after we.
okay.
The only thing I'm still mildly confused about what you're saying, Andy, because I thought I understood. If we showed on our reports, new policy showed on reports, 500,000 in this new line item. We're keeping the money here in our county thing. I wasn't sure what you were saying.
Until we make the payment. No, we would make,
Okay, then are you talking about making the payment
I'm talking about making
Okay.
the payment every year. Yeah.
every
Yeah,
year?
yeah.
Okay.
Now, because it's on our schedule, it's up to Myrna and her team, do we want to make one payment of 500,000? I'm just using that number. Do you want to make 12 payments of, $40,000, to take advantage of dollar cost there? I'm going to leave that up to you, whatever's easiest for you. But so what we would be doing, I believe, if this is what Myrna ultimately recommends, is we would be establishing a reserve fund for future additional discretionary payments to the pension. We would be taking $10 million or $5 million, whatever the amount is, on paper from cash to fund balance. But it's still in cash. It's just, it would go from unassigned fund balance to reserve account. It's still sitting in cash until she makes the payments every year. Yeah. Did I articulate that right? Yeah, okay.
I wasn't sure when you were talking about making the payments. Anyway, got it.
Yeah, that would be her call as to whether it's once a year and when it's made. Yeah.
And am I getting the feeling that there isn't a huge appetite for looking at a 115 trust? Like, I'm not hearing anyone like really.
Doesn't seem necessary.
That's what I'm saying. I
Because
just want to be
we're
really
acting as
clear.
though we have one, we don't have to create one.
Yeah.
Right, I just want to
Yeah.
be clear that that's sort of what.
Yeah.
It didn't feel to me like the benefits were enough to justify the additional work when we could accomplish pretty much the same thing more easily, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, moving ahead. We are at item 4.2, budget accounting and finance services workflow to our CFO.
Okay. So we are in May and in this workflow and in this agenda, we will be speaking to the Q3 capital project update. And since in February, we did not present a procedures update, we're presenting it today as well. So that's where we are today. I'd like to present an updated workflow in June for the following fiscal year, if that's okay with this.
Okay, so we do meet in June, we don't meet in July. And will we be, the pension valuation, they were saying that we got a pension valuation in July.
There, with CalPERS provides us a
Yeah,
pension valuation
right.
that was presented to this committee a couple of months ago.
Right, that was the old one.
We could, and we have, the library has had an independent valuation that provides additional information about
Oh,
a longer view. But from my perspective, the CalPERS pension has provided us with a lot of the information that we need to make these decisions and how it's progressing. So I don't feel so compelled that it's not required. But it is a good thing to do, but at this time, they are expensive. They're at least $30,000. So I reserved to not do it, in this year.
Okay, so no independent evaluation. The CalPERS will come through in August, and then when would we see that here? Oh, you'll put that on our calendar when you
So
redo. the
which one in
workflow.
August?
The CalPERS valuation, the
Yes, the
current
CalPERS
one.
will be available to us in August, so I
Right.
can add it to.
Okay, great.
the
And then
meeting.
that long-awaited five-year forecast, which seems a scary thing to attempt at this point. But I'll just bring it forward if you're interested in
Okay.
pursuing that.
I will look at it and
Think
work
about
it
it.
into the workflow.
Okay. Super. Any comments, questions about the workflow? Thank you very much. Okay, off to the financial reports for the period ending April the 30th.
So I will put it in a nutshell. In essence, property tax is doing really well. We've had our second receipt, which represents the second payment of property taxes that comes in April. And we are at 96.1%. There are still postings that take place in May and June. So I am projecting that we will make our budget target for under property tax. Under sales tax, however, I am still seeing a shortfall. And it's been volatile. Like we did have a 1% shortfall earlier this year. The December return that hits in February closed that, yet we're still seeing, now I'm seeing a 1.6% difference or variance from the last year. So although I have forecasted earlier this year about $100,000 shortfall, I am now estimating about $400,000 shortfall. I would like to also include here today is that I have updated the budget for next year to reflect a $400,000 shortfall. And we can absorb it. The sales tax can still absorb that. So I just wanted to give you an early notification of that. But for this fiscal year, what's helping close that shortfall is the interest that we've earned on our pooled cash, as well as savings under salaries and benefits and our services and supplies. So no need for further reductions, but it will be very evident in the June budget that I present to you that there will be a shortfall. And what I have been seeing and now witnessing is that consultants and the experts that analyze sales tax, they're projecting a shortfall this year compared to last year, and that's what I'm showing here. But then from this fiscal year to next year, the projection is that there will be a slight increase. So it doesn't in the big picture, it really doesn't help us much because we're not going to see an increase essentially next fiscal year. Other than that, I did want to mention that under the fund balance, there were adjustments that the commission approved, which was the $600,000 payment to the registrar of voters or the county for the election of Measure, I said Measure Y, but it's Measure W, as well as the new Roseland Regional Library in April. That $4 million was allocated to property tax and sales tax according to our policy, but in May, the commission took another action to allocate the full $4 million to property tax. So we'll be seeing some changes there. And also it'll continue to change because we have additional reports that, we're asking to increase, the allocation of fund balance. So I'll take any questions.
So at the bottom of our report there, the fund balance, as of April 30th, 2025, it's close to $15 million between the two funds. And when we get to the reports, I think you want to make a report before we do the reports, but when we get to the reports, I want to talk about how that might be more reflective of our reality, which isn't really 15 million of completely unassigned money. So, okay. So any other questions from commissioners for, yeah, okay, go ahead.
I have a question.
Mhm.
And I apologize because you kind of got me thinking about it. I know that our OPEB payments continue for the next few years. Is that reflected on the fund balance anywhere?
No, because, OPEB is paid through our operating revenue, so our.
Oh, so we're
annual
doing it that
revenue
way. So we're not, okay,
are part of our operating budget.
great, thank you.
Other questions? All right, okay. Do you want to go on to the next chunk and then I'll come back to my questions? So an update on the 2025 Q3 capital projects.
Yes. So this is compliant with our new budgeting procedure for our modernization projects. Wanted to give you an update on our approved projects. So the list of approved projects for facilities are in attachment A, and those under IT are in attachment B. So just going down the list under Petaluma, Petaluma project is on track to be completed by June 30th and reopening on July 14th approximately. And the library staff and the city of Petaluma have been working very closely in monitoring the status and the budget for this construction. And but the library is the one that is managing the project. So for the library, the approved budget was $3.7 million. That was approved a couple of years ago. And so we've been drawing down on that. So the staff is requesting to release the final $787,797 to complete this project. We have invoiced the city of Petaluma to reimburse us about $1.3 million, and we're waiting for that. And so they've been receiving funds from the state according to the Building Forward grant. And so we're in good terms moving forward. Under Healdsburg, the Healdsburg modernization project is scheduled to be open by the end of this month. No, completing by the end of this month and reopening before the end of June. As we have discussed in this committee, there is a projected budget shortfall. And it has increased from the last time that staff presented to this committee. And the handout was given out today. It was not included in your packet, but we wanted to give you an update from the last time that we presented, which I think was February. So what has increased the funding gap is an estimated change order number 4 of about $136,000. Provided that increased the budget from 3.2 million approximately to 3.3 million. And so our funding gap is $856,264. In the report, staff lays out how to close this funding gap. Under the furnishings budget, there is a savings there, and staff is recommending to use $100,000 from that line item to close the gap, and also to utilize the savings under the central design costs. As you may recall, next fiscal year, staff is proposing to do recarpeting and painting at the entire central branch, and therefore, since we're not moving forward on a full construction, given all the pending decisions in that area on behalf of the city, we're recommending to use the $350,000 to close the Healdsburg gap. And therefore, we will need an additional funds from the fund balance. Although the written report says 340,000, given the new information that we presented to you today, the request is for $406,264.
6,000?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Thank you.
Mary, can I ask you a question about this? And I realize that you can only report what you get, so I don't know where.
Just.
Oh, okay. So this may be a question for Dave, but I understand the math and what you're asking for us to approve, and I'm in favor of doing that. My concern is about the numbers we're seeing here and their usefulness in analyzing the project. So for example, I see FF and E, parenthesis, moving storage, et cetera. Those feel like two really different things to me. I understand that there's furniture, fixtures, and equipment that's going into the new branch. But I also understand that there were significant costs involved in setting up the temporary mini branch at the community center. And it feels like they're being lumped together into the same category here, which is not helpful. Do you have the information to break this out any further, or do we need to turn that back to Dave?
I think that's a question for Dave.
All right, Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Yes,
So-
you're absolutely correct. We lumped the moving costs in with the FF&E costs just because that's how our spreadsheet was set up. Now, I have that spreadsheet. I'm totally willing to share that with you. That does break down line by line what each item costs, like what did the moving cost, what did prepping the space for the mini branch cost. That's all being accounted for in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I'm gonna add, for our purposes today in approving the money, I don't need that, but I'm gonna ask you if you could please provide that to us. And the reason is in terms of our understanding of project costs and what we should expect going forward, it would really be helpful for us to have that. So I'll just give you an example. I'm looking here at the awarded contract and the change orders. So first thing I did was I added up, okay, what are the change orders and what percentage of the awarded contract do they represent? Well, the change orders added up to $248,500. That's 13.89%. Always difficult to project from one datum point, but that's saying to me, okay, as we look at future projects, we should probably estimate that whatever the agreed upon contract price is, we've got to account for 10 to 15% in change orders.
And in the budget that I create for the projects, yeah, there's a contingency that's exactly that 10% is our standard.
Okay, and maybe it should be 15, but until, you know, my point is just that by having that information, we can look at it so that we can reflect back to you.
Sure.
My feeling is that, and I'm not saying it wasn't a worthwhile investment, because I know that the community of Healdsburg really appreciates it. But my feeling is that the cost to set up the mini library was more substantial than maybe we had initially estimated. But if it's not broken out, we can't look at it. And as future projects come up, we're not in a position to say, gee, what is this likely to cost us, and should we authorize it?
Agreed, totally.
So that's my request. If you could please get back to us for our next month with those expenses broken out separately from F&E, that would be very helpful.
Can do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I agree. I was just talking to our branch manager today at lunch about the planned carpeting and painting in Roanoke Park. And it's like, well, can you move into the conference room or not? And you have those kind of costs, move in IT and all that stuff. But Erica sat here a couple of meetings ago and said this was rather extraordinary cost to create this, off-site kind of thing about all the moving costs and moving the IT. And she made a big point of that, but we don't really know. We're kind of operating as commissioners in the dark. And I'm really looking forward to your committee getting, into the weeds, if I may say so. I love the weeds and filling us in on the real cost of this stuff, because we're the ones.
Provide a weed whacker to help us.
I know weed whacker. I like weeds. Grow those weeds. But anyway, no, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of the new commissioner, newish? I don't know how long I've been playing about, newer than any of you. That's all I need to do. Every time we've done a renovation in any town, is there always been, we provide a sub, whatever, a smaller venue? Or do we say, we're sorry, Healdsburg is closed for X number of months?
I'd like to
please use-"
answer that
Yeah,
question.
yeah, go for it.
So before this JPA 10 years ago,
Yeah.
the big example was the town of Sonoma. And the town of Sonoma, they created a temporary branch in a church and charged huge amount of money to fix it all up because it wasn't suitable for a library. And this became a very big issue. And I think part of the discussion when a JPA was revised, now we're just now getting rolling with all of this amount. This is all kind of new stuff. When you say ever, we're kind of doing it for the first time now. The smaller renovations, like we did Cloverdale, right, 10 years ago, and it was closed actually, but I don't think we didn't do a temporary branch. And Guerneville a couple of years ago, and we didn't do a temporary branch there. Did we? I don't think we did. Yeah.
At every
So-
location we've done a modernization project, we have at minimum provided holds and returns service.
Yeah.
So in Sonoma, it was Burlingame Hall. In Sebastopol, it was the youth center. At Coddingtown, it was a storefront at a strip mall across the street. At Windsor, it was out of the forum room. At Guerneville, it was out of the forum room. Yeah, so we have typically provided at least a base level of service anytime we've closed a location.
Right. But we're now talking about such significant closures for such a long period of time. That's why we're, have these kind of costs.
So it's a case by case basis. It's not okay. that makes
Making
sense.
it work for the community
Okay,
in the
got
best way we can.
That said, we're learning every time we do it, and I think that's part of what Andy and the committee is going to.
Okay, where were we? Back to,
Okay, so I provided, I'll move to Cloverdale. And under Cloverdale, the project is on track to be completed on June 30th. And there will be gender neutral restrooms available second week of June. And the Cloverdale project benefited from a bequest that came through the foundation of $484,000 approximately and that we can apply towards the project, which is costing $650,000. So while the library approved 350,000, we will have some savings there. Under Rincon Valley, the library has been in discussions about the design and costs for this modernization project, and staff will present a proposal in June, and with the estimated costs that are approximately $4 million at this time. At Central, as you know, no work has been done at Central this fiscal year. Therefore, we're looking at savings that we'd like to apply to the Healdsburg project. History and genealogy, the equipment has been ordered and expected to arrive after June 30th. So the funds that are available here, I expect to rebudget next fiscal year. Rohnert Park, we have, it's still on our list as an active project. There's no work there, no groundbreaking yet. We're waiting for the city that is going to manage that project. So I expect that these funds will also be rebudgeted next year. Under Windsor, that project has been completed, and the Friends of the Library donated 21,000. As you see in the spreadsheet, there's a little bit of a equivalent shortfall that will be covered by the Friends of the Library. Under the bibliobus, we have done the great college try to acquire a gently used bibliobus, but we were not successful in this. So staff is continuing to look at alternatives. Guerneville project, the county is managing this project, and the library committed $143,314 in matching grants. The Building Forward grant made this project possible. So I don't know what, maybe Dave can give an update on where we are in groundbreaking there.
Sure. So we just had a meeting today. This will be, this work is replacing some siding around the building envelope, doing some ADA upgrades to the restrooms, replacing the HVAC system, adding in lighting controls. And so it goes out to bid. We are anticipating the middle of July for it to go out to bid. Then work to begin early summer. The work is not going to impact services. That's one of the goals, is to have no impact on services. Most of the work is outside. So we may not have restrooms for a couple weeks for the public, but other than that, everything seems to be running very smooth.
Thank you, Dave. Again, next on the small projects and furnishings, there's about a little bit over $300,000 that have been budgeted here. We anticipate $100,000 savings that we'd like to apply to the Healdsburg project. And the new Roseland Regional Library, I not want to repeat myself, but this is not reflected in the current report, but I just want to make a note of it because the actions took place, the actions that took place in May. Under information technology, a lot of activity there as well. We are asking a release of $539,000 for the remaining projects. And you can see the projects on attachment B. That's the end of my report, unless you have any questions.
I had just a couple quick questions on the bibliobus. The last time we talked about it, I thought we didn't like the bibliobus because it was too complicated and kept breaking down or something. And I wanted to ask, excuse me, in that grant we got last year, that had money for a van in there. Do we buy the van? And do we use the van? And is this bibliobus going to be more like the van or more like their current bibliobus?
This would be actually much bigger. It was a nicer version of the than what we currently have for the Biblio bus. It was a, like a, uh, the equivalent of an F-350 truck, which had been retrofitted to have basically the small library in the back. And it had barely been used when funds were cut at a library in Iowa. So they put it up for bid. We placed a bid for 150,000, wanting to leave some of our funding for getting it here and anything we needed to do once it got here as far as licensing and so forth. Unfortunately, Burbank bid 160, and that was the end of the story for us. But now we are looking at other vehicles. The problem with ours that we talked about where it's air conditioning issues and things like that. After Simone, staff from community engagement, Simone and Jessica went to a conference back in October to, it was a, I don't want to call it bibliobus. Most places say bookmobile, but there's actually a library bookmobile association. And so they went to a conference to see the different types and learn quite a bit about them. Unfortunately, air conditioning will always be a challenge because of the amount of what is carrying, but you can actually add a secondary air conditioning into the back, which is something we're considering for moving forward. We do want to get a bigger bibliobus that we currently have or something even slightly larger. And then our current bibliobus will be, well, a second bibliobus, but also a backup. So if one is being serviced, we have a second. We do still have the van, but the van is not really used for programs as often. It just doesn't lend itself to that in the same way. Yeah. It gets used a lot, but not so much for programming. A lot of times it's like in parades because we have all these great magnets we can put up on it. It's not quite wrapped like the biblio buses. But we utilize it for that. We utilize it for school visits and taking materials because we can, you know, go and have a lot of, especially if it's in a free book event or something like that, we have a lot of storage space in there.
Thank you so much for that. Last minute questions. We're running a little long here.
So this is, just to clarify, you're reviewing this with us now, but this will come before the commission in June for approval.
Yes, the request of additional funding for.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna ask if there are any big questions, because I do want to, again, I do want to make a suggestion on our reports. But are there any questions on any of the reports for right now? My suggestion is going to be if we go to our statement of special fund activity. And looking first of all, at property tax, which again shows that we have, you know, almost $11 million in available for budgeting. And if we look at the same thing on the property tax, I mean, on the sales tax, it looks like we have almost 4 million. So these numbers, you know, can be misleading in terms of how much money we actually have. And you already addressed the fact that the Roseland will be, you know, on the most current report, the Roseland fund will be in here. But for example, in the capital expenditure report, we're talking about $4 million for Rincon Valley. And normally we haven't added anything in here until it's kind of gone farther down the line, but yet we're still planning to do it. And I think that we need to put a column on here for, you know, things that we're committed to and we're going to do until we decide they're not going to happen, because otherwise, as someone was saying, cities or whoever is going to look at our fund and go, oh, they got, you know, $14 million. Well, we don't, because we have plans for it. So that's my suggestion. So when you, the next time you update this for
what I could do is even for the June meeting, I can add in the two projects. The 400,000 here for Hillsburg and the Rincon Valley, project, and you'll have those in there. And the Roseland will also, adjustment will be made. And the projects for next year are also, in the budget. So,
They'll be reflected.
those are reflected in the budget.
Okay. So then would that capture everything that we've talked about doing and spending money on,
Yes, the budget one would reflect everything.
including Rincon Valley, 4 million?
Well, if it's approved, yeah. Well, I could assume it's approved and I can make note in there.
I'd
I-
appreciate that. I mean,
yeah.
we really need to get a solid number in, or reasonably
I think
solid
that's
number. in.
reasonable. I have I don't have any reason why not to always caveat things.
Yeah, because it's misleading using that word unrestricted or
Available.
available
fine.
for budgeting when we've already had plans for it. Right, all righty, thank you very much for that. And so Catherine, at long last, we apologize. We should put you on earlier, give you a starring role. But we would like you to update us on the budget, accounting, and financial services procedures, and we want to know what you call yourself when it's called. It's like
Thank you.
FAFSA or something.
BAFs,
BAFs,
yes,
okay,
budget, accounting, and financial services.
good.
That kind of sums up everything we do in our department. So this is just a simple agenda. I'm just gonna go over introduction, the three major procedures and processes we worked on this fiscal year, which is the capital asset management, grant management, and the internal audit of our bequests. And then any questions or takeaways. So, as we call ourselves, BAVS is a division that supports every division within our library. We have been working with each individual division as well as the whole library to improve our processes and procedures. Capital asset, we have added our capital assets to Asset Panda. And this is where we have the inventory of all of our capital assets. It also allows us to make any additions or disposals as well as our depreciation schedule. And we added the facilities capital assets to it this year. Grant management, we have increased our support on our grants. We review the grant documents. We also looking at when the reports are need to be due to the grantor. And so we added a grant tracker within Smartsheets to assist our team as well as the grant person who's actually doing the grants and managing it. And then that helps with best practices, which is, for example, what we are doing if whenever there's an interval that needs a financial reporting, we work with that the grant manager within the library. And then we also I provide the grant reports to the division heads with their budget versus actuals. And then we did an internal audit and reconciliation of our bequests. The library has received several bequests throughout the years, and there has been a lot of questions of what is available. So there was an internal audit about 4 years ago, and now that we have more staff, we're able to now do that on an annual basis. And so going forward, we also will have more continuously reporting of what's available towards management.
Catherine, are these requests that have come directly to the library and not to the foundation?
Some of them we've had for years, like Cromwell and Hopkins, which you'll see on our cash flow report. They came to the library, I think, prior 2017. So these are ones that the library has held within for several years. And so we took the time to review the grant, or excuse me, the bequest documents to review what are the stipulations, or if they are, if there's no stipulations. And so we've reviewed that piece. We will probably take to the commission any recommendations that further along the time, but that's what we took the time to review.
I was just gonna ask, how many bequests are we talking about? What-
19. If you look on your, no, that's okay. There are 19, and if you look at our report for 2, that is all of them. And then about 10 of those out of the 19 have very particular restrictions. So we are looking at the ones without restrictions to see what we can recommend to the commission. That will be further along the line, but that's what we really focused, is the internal audit and the reconciliation of the bequests.
Well, go ahead. I don't
Just
think
a
you.
comment, other libraries, you know, you have, even if they have a foundation, other libraries get bequests. It's just, that's the way the wills and the trusts sort of shake out, and, it would be nice if a lot of them went to the foundation, but sometimes libraries like them too.
I think it's also because we started off as a nonprofit, so that's why I thought we received some of the bequests at that point in time.
In terms of, the commission did approve the gifts and donations policy that covers this. Many times, you know, families, when they put together, you know, their trust planning, you know, if they plan early enough, they may come to the library and let us know. You know, it's up to the director to determine if it's more reasonable to have the library, the foundation to manage them. So sometimes there is an opportunity to have discussions with the benefactor. If not, we will follow whatever the trust says, and they may come directly to the library.
We didn't give you a chance to get to your final takeaways before we start asking our questions.
Blaming Andy.
Well, it's, to sum it up, we had 3 major changes we implemented this fiscal year. Like I said, it was for our capital assets, our grants, and then also our bequests. And these are because we partner, like I said, with each division and the library as a whole. So we're always trying to improve our process, especially with all the feedback we do receive from the finance committee as well as our division managers.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I would say I've never heard of the Panda, but I may have laughed. I thought that must be a misspelling. But Asset Panda, in prior years, there was always the audit exception that we had, because we didn't have a good list of all the assets. So
Yes.
this is wonderful. I think somebody finally did compile a list, but I didn't know it went into Panda, which is
Yes.
my favorite file.
The county gave us the list, so we worked from that, but yes, we were able to put it all in the one program.
Well, that's great. And just the other day, former Commission Chair Tim May was asking of the Measure O Oversight Committee about updates to the Cromwell and the other Petaluma one. And those are actually, there's a connection to the lab there. They're supposed to be doing the oversight.
I think that's actually more specifically Buffman, because I believe Buffman had the connection with the lab. And I believe actually that one is mostly already been used. I think there might be still a little bit of a balance in there. But that's the one that I understood went to the lab.
Well, he was asking, I don't remember who he was asking, but we were talking about this anyway. He said, you know, there's only like 2 of them left on that lab to remember the stuff, and he wanted some documentation and so forth. So this is great that you've got a handle on all this. This is wonderful, and great work and organized.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, again, thank you for making me wait so long today. We are. Lost my page. Does anyone have any questions or any comments for, an agenda item for our next meeting? Seeing none, we follow the workflow. We do meet in June, we do not meet in July. Thank you. Okay, so we meet again June the 23rd here. 16 spot, our favorite place. Library headquarters at 3 o'clock on June 32. Anything, and before we close the gavel? All right, thanks everybody for participating.
Thank you.